Call work session to order. I'd like to call the order work session of the Belton City Council meeting, May 11th, 2021. What items do we have tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item that we have is a work session this evening is to talk about funding options for capital improvements. But before we get started, tonight Sheila will be giving information about that, and then Greg will be talking about the 5-year capital improvement program. That is a draft overview of our capital needs, of the items that are not only in this year's budget, but in the future of what we're looking at. So those items that would be funded, speculated to be funded, and then items that are unfunded. And what I wanted to further explain is that this capital overview that Greg will be giving this evening is just a brief overview. We will be doing in future meetings, the next work session, we will be doing deep dives into each of those topic areas. So, for example, our next meeting after this one, the work session will be on water improvement and what that looks like. And then the next one will be probably about roads, and then we'll be deep diving into facilities, stormwater, and wastewater as well. So each of the work sessions will do a deeper dive into what you're already seeing right here, but tonight will just be an overview. But first, whenever we have capital improvement items, we also need to know how those items are funded and how we pay for those. And so Sheila has a presentation for you this evening to help explain that. Please, if you have any questions throughout this, don't hesitate to ask. So Sheila?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I did give you a boring handout at your places, but there's a much more appealing visually slideshow that we're going to talk about. So first of all, there are two different options to fund city capital needs: pay-as-you-go financing and debt financing. Both pay-as-you-go and debt financing, both are paid with using the exact same funding sources. So whether you're paying as you go or borrowing money, when you borrow money, you have to repay that debt, and the funding sources are all the same. So we have property taxes, and those are paid by all property owners in the city. Sales taxes, and those are paid by all individuals shopping in the community, or rates and user fees, which are paid by the user of the service. As for pay-as-you-go financing, there are some pros and cons for both pay-as-you-go and debt. The pros for pay-as-you-go, future funds are not tied up in servicing debt payments, so that gives you a little bit of flexibility. Just like if you were going to take out a loan for a home or anything else, you're required to make those debt service payments going forward. Interest savings that you would have paid if you borrowed the money can now be put toward other projects. There's basically greater budget transparency because you're showing the cost as you go instead of buying it all up front. And then you're avoiding the risk of default. The cons as far as pay-as-you-go financing, you can have to wait a long time for new infrastructure that you need. Also, large projects may exhaust the city's entire budget for capital projects. And then there's the risk of inflation. Now for debt financing, the pros are that you get that infrastructure right when it's needed. And then the cons are the cost of issuance and interest adds to the project costs. The debt payments limit the future budget flexibility because you have to make those debt service payments no matter what. Even in years that your revenues might be dropping. It diminishes your future choices because you're tying up money for a significant period going forward. Future generations are forced to service the debt requirements. There's continuing disclosure and tax compliance requirements when you do debt, And then there are also bond covenant requirements that can sometimes require that you collect additional revenues so that you have a reserve in place. Now, if you chose to do debt financing, there are different types of debt choices that are available, and I want to talk about those. There are general obligation bonds. These bonds are subject to a debt limit of 20% of the city's assessed valuation. So we wouldn't be able to borrow more than 20% of our total assessed valuation. They have to be repaid within 20 years of the date that we issue the bonds, and they require a super majority voter approval, 2/3 or 4/7 depending on the election date. Then there are revenue bonds, and revenue bonds are issued to pay for improvements that have a definable user or revenue base. So these are the types of bonds that we have currently for our water and wastewater projects. And that is typically what you would do. There's not a maximum amount that you can take out, like with the general obligation bonds, and you use fees in order to pay them back. They're payable from and secured by the pledge of a specific source of funds from the project being financed, and it requires a simple majority voter approval. Unless you're pledging sales taxes, and then it's a supermajority voter approval.
Sheila, any debt financing has to be voter approved, right?
No, and there's one other type that is not, and that's the next type.
Okay, thank you.
The next slide. Then the final type is either lease purchase or certificates of participation obligations. In this type of debt, the city leases the financed equipment and or real property from a lessor. The lessor could be an investor, or it could be a bank. The city makes payments over a series of annually renewable one-year terms, and we have the option to purchase the leased property at the end of the term. And for this, voter approval is not required. And so you have really two simple options: either pay as you go or borrow the funds. No matter what, the funds to pay for the projects all come from the same place.
Any thoughts on debt financing about controlling construction costs, being able to do it all right now instead of over 20 years?
Sure, that's one of the main pros of debt financing, is that you can eliminate your risk of inflation.
Sheila, on the 20%, what we've already borrowed that were against the 20%, roughly?
We are very close to our maximum debt capacity. We have, with the new assessed value, we have about $15 million of debt capacity left, and we actually are already thinking, and when we look at this CIP program, there's no revenue sources, so you wouldn't be able to do any other debt financing for roads. And so typically all of our general obligation debt is usually used towards stormwater projects and streets. And that would be because our taxes usually fund those kinds of projects, because we're not charging people as they use streets or stormwater projects and such. And so typically you would see general obligation debt be used for stormwater and street projects. You don't have to, but typically you would see that.
It's not a big option.
we just, the only reason that we have additional debt capacity now is because of the growth in assessed valuation. And if that growth in assessed valuation doesn't happen as projected, we might not even have the capacity to do more street bonds.
What effect might North Point have on this?
Well,
We don't know, I don't know what the assessed valuation is gonna be, but
sure. That we're anticipating that our assessed value is going to grow because of the projects. First of all, you have companies coming in and putting in personal property, and so personal property, business personal property, and then also individual personal property. It should have a positive impact and increase our assessed value.
thank you.
When we talk about infrastructure improvements like water, sewer, though, those are gonna be revenue bonds because they're proprietary funds and not general obligation, correct?
Yes, you're able to do revenue bonds for those. You would also, I mean, there really is an option that you could choose to do general obligation bonds. You could, but typically we would do revenue bonds because those are proprietary funds and there's a user fee associated with
We didn't have
that
to worry about the
service.
20% if we do revenue bonds
Correct.
compared to GO bonds,
Correct.
correct? Okay.
Yes. There's not a limit. As long as voters approve, you can go into debt as much as you want, but your rates are going to have to be set in place to be able to cover the debt service payments on those.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Angela.
Okay, so forgive me because I forgot to, I didn't think this through to email and ask ahead of time. Have we looked more into the 0% and negative interest loans for our water yet?
There is something called state revolving funds, SRF loans. The city already has those on our current water and wastewater projects. That those loans are low interest. They're not 0 interest, they're not negative, and they also you would still incur the cost of issuance fees, and so and you still have to pay all of it back.
So on the state of Missouri's website, it does discuss it. There are 0% and negative ones. So have we not looked more into that then?
We have looked, we would qualify for low interest state revolving
So it's
funds.
the qualifying. I just wanted to make sure I understand. It's the qualifying that we don't qualify for less than the low interest.
Yes, it's low interest.
Okay.
Anybody else? Continue.
Mayor.
Oh, go ahead.
So obviously, it would depend on what we want to do would be the best option. There's options to look for in each event of what you might be looking at as a city.
Yes. So what,
This is all good, just depends on what you're looking to finance.
yes, and so the best thing to do is for the council to know all of its options, and then for us to put together a plan to go forward, because there's a vast amount of needs, which Greg's going to go over with you guys, and then, and so there are a lot of important decisions to be made, and once the council makes these decisions, they're not easy to flip around. So for example, in our capital improvement plan, we already kind of have an idea that we're going to ask for voter approval for the general obligation bonds for the next set of street improvements. But the council, and so it makes it a little bit challenging as council people change, because, you know, we're kind of trudging forward on this plan, and then when you make the change, obviously council would need to be able to vote to approve put that question to the voters. And so it's kind of time for us to relook at all of this. For example, the rate increases, we kind of had a plan to pay as you go for the water line, and that kind of changed a little bit. And so it's just a good idea to have kind of a not super long, like 20-year plan, but at least in the next 5 years, because they're big decisions that you can't necessarily change on a dime, flip on a dime. A lot of planning goes into, needs to be thought of, and it's kind of like a puzzle that you have to put together to make sure all the pieces are in place to be able to do the infrastructure plans that need to be done. And it's a little bit challenging sometimes, and I know you guys are all up for it.
Go ahead, Allison.
There we go. Hi. Let's just talk about water then in the 5-year plan. Is there a chance we could see some sort of modeling between a pay-as-you-go for the average water user versus, any of these financing options? Again, for the average water user, if we could see kind of a model and a dollars to dollars comparison, that might be helpful.
Yes, so as Alexa mentioned that we would be going deeper into each of the options as the weeks go by. And as we get into each option, we'll bring you guys all the information that we can, so that you guys have all the information you need to make a good decision.
Anybody else?
Greg,
Okay.
if you'd like to proceed with the capital improvement plan?
So you basically have led perfectly into this next sheet. So I present today, or left on your seats, each one of you, as Sheila said, a nice boring sheet that lists 5 different areas. And these 5 different areas are basically the 5 areas of capital improvements that we're working on. And so there are facilities, this first one, then stormwater, then it has transportation, wastewater, and then water. And so just as a kind of brief overview, so look across the page, it's got the project title. We have what was approved in this year's budget, the FY 2022 budget. And then there are other lines further out, like the ones that are in orange. I put some in orange. Those are the ones we're going to ask for in next year's budget. And then there's actually some red ones that are things that we need to discuss. But just kind of looking down at facilities, we're working on the Public Works facility. There's work on the City Hall exterior. Next year we want to do something with the HVAC system and the City Hall sanitary sewer. As we get to the facilities week, we can dive into each one of those projects. For stormwater, we're working on projects for the Cambridge East culverts, which are between Peculiar Drive and Mullen. There's a Cambridge West culvert, which is a low water crossing west of Cedar. The Hargis Lake, which we're getting ready to bid here any day. Our stormwater preservation program, that's basically replacing rusted pipes in the city. And then the Spanish Villas, which is working on the problem at Sunrise at Buena Vista and Valley. And so those are the types of projects we're working on there. Spanish Villas will be next year. We're basically going to see what all the actual prices of these jobs are and then dedicate the rest of the funds to the Spanish Villas. So that's kind of an estimate of what's available. As construction pricing, as most of you have seen, has changed rapidly day to day. A sheet of plywood that sold for $7 last year is now worth $53 at Home Depot this week. So we'll see how these things bid and where we go. Other projects in transportation, as part of an agreement with North Point, they're building a dog park and we're building the road that leads up to it. We have North Scott, we have funding in fiscal year 24 to do that project. Regulatory science, that's something that's in our every year budget to do signing work, but it's considered a capital project. So I have that in there every year that we do that work. 58 in Powell is a job that is eliminating the connection at Peculiar Drive and doing work in that area. And then our street preservation programs, the patching dollars that we go out and have Superior Bone help us do, or whoever our contractor is that year, do more patching work for us. And then we have street reconstruction. This is the one that Sheila was talking about. We're funded, the black number, the $5,061,000. That number, we are funded this year through the current bond, but that bond ends at the end of this year. We'll have spent the money. And so in the fiscal year 23, which is next spring, we'd have to go back and ask for funding for the next 3 years. And then I have the fiscal year 26. There's actually 3 more years after that, but the problem then is, will we have bonding capacity at that point to do it or not? I've showed the money that the whole program is $45 million. And so we're, after this year, we'll still have $31.5 million that still needs to be completed. And so that's where we're at on that program. On the back side, you can see for wastewater, we continue to always work on inflow and infiltration. That's preventing water from getting to our sanitary sewer, which causes backups. Stream-based stabilization is something we try to work on every year, and that's where you see sanitary sewer lines get exposed and they should be buried. It's mainly because creeks wash it out. We're going to repair the Sunrise Gardens lift station. We always do work at our wastewater treatment plant, and then we're working on our wastewater treatment plant regional study, where we're looking at trying to make our plant into a regional plant.
Greg, can you identify where the Sunrise Garden lift station is at, in case people don't know?
It is, that's a really great question. It's at I believe it's the south side of the city along Cambridge, but I'd have to look that up to be exactly sure. Because they all have names that they all refer to them, and
Because I don't know where it's at. I was just curious. I've never heard of
I didn't bring my
Sunrise
sheet
Gardens.
that actually pointed it out. Then for water lines, we have, she has it right there. Then for the water lines, basically what's in black is the dollars that we have in our account for this year. And then the red numbers are based upon the plan that the last council had for the rate increases, and that would be the dollar amounts as the pay-as-you-go would have it. And so that's why I haven't read, because that was planned. That plan can change. And then we are doing the water master plan, which is one of our master plans that needs to be updated for Missouri DNR. And so I was right. It is on Cambridge, just to the west of Mullen, is where the Sunrise lift station's at. I feel better now. So that's kind of a brief overview that shows what the items are, and then as we go through meeting by meeting, we'll look at each one of these categories, and we can discuss the funding options, what the projects are. Now, this is what is funded. We also have a list, so when we go into each category, like in transportation, everybody knows there's additional roads that people would want, a connection here, or they want this or that. So we'll bring forward, and we'll also show a list of unfunded projects that aren't on the list, because this is generally all projects that are funded. But we'll bring those forward so you can see those and understand that the need that we have is just not limited to this sheet. I have many, many more projects that we could do to improve the city. And so we'll talk about those at that time. Happy to answer any questions you have.
How's the TDD tie into all this? Because I know there's some of those roads are going to be paid for by the TDD that's currently in place.
So when we get to the transportation, I have a sheet that we're going to talk about. There's 2 sections of Mullen Road and North Cass, and those will show you that here's the price tag on these roads, and that the person who's supposed to pay for it's the TDD.
So the TDD that's placed out there right now is only going to fund the extension of Cass Parkway and expanding the Mullen Road?
Correct.
Are we not allowed to use that anywhere else in that?
There was a specific
that-
plan that was set up for
Okay.
exact roads, and that's the last portion that the TDD was supposed to work on.
Okay. But that can be extended into that geographical area in the future too, though, right?
If there were funding available, that could be something that the TDD could look at and meet and confer over, but I will tell you right now that the funding capacity that they have does not exceed $5 million, and the estimated cost to do that entire project clear to North Cass Parkway is over
It's getting close to about $20 million.
Oh, okay,
So there's a lot more need there than what they have capacity for.
okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Angela.
So when we're talking about each individual, we still get kind of a crossover to where, hypothetically, if we did a bond for water, this is what it would look like for the streets, that we would have to pull this from the street bonds, we wouldn't be able to do this kind of thing? No. Shaking your head, no. We won't be able to kind of look and see, because if we're taking bonds that from one area that we were expecting and putting it to something else, will we be able to compare that?
Right, that's why Sheila was talking about a few minutes ago that when we look at the capacity for it to be able to do stormwater or streets, there is no funding mechanism for that. So that's why we always look at a bonding capacity for those. And then the other capacity that we have to pay is through debt or through fees of some nature to be able to do like water and revenue bonds. Thank you. And so that, you're correct. So but what I wanted to make sure, what I first thought I heard you say was that you could use street funds to pay for something else.
No.
And that wasn't the
No,
case.
not what I meant. No, just that if we were considering doing a bond for water, then we wouldn't be able to do a same bond for the 20%, not the revenue bonds. And if we've already kind of thought out and planned street, will we be able to compare? So these are the things within the streets. If we chose this option, this wouldn't get done.
It's a little bit more complicated than that. So the 20% of assessed valuation is also broken further down between 10% of that you can use for any kinds of projects, and 10% can only be used on, and I don't know why I'm looking towards our attorney, but I thought maybe he might remember it. I believe it's just street and stormwater.
That's correct, and that'd be something that bond counsel would also be able to answer if that were the city council's choice.
But as we go to each funding option, and take a deep dive in each project, I'll have a lot more specific information before each of those work sessions to I want to make sure that you have all of the options. But we really thought that it was important for you guys to know that there is more than just water line infrastructure that needs to be done. There's more than just roads that need to be done, because we wanted you guys to have a big picture and know that there are lots of needs, so that we didn't focus in and lose sight of all of the other needs, because it might change your guys' decisions, if that makes sense.
Go ahead.
If I remember right from the last 2 years, I don't know when it was, but we cannot do a levy increase for water and sewer, correct? Because they're proprietary funds, we gotta do revenue?
You could do a tax increase, but it would be a general fund tax increase that then what you would have to do is transfer that money into the proprietary funds.
Is general fund is still a levy increase, all right?
So,
It's not something that's going to be billed specifically on a water bill.
correct. It would be there are possible tax increases that you could do.
I guess
it's
what
possible.
I'm trying to get to is when we do a revenue bond, it's tied to the usage of that proprietary fund.
Yes.
When we do a levy increase, it's tied to the cost or the assessed valuation of the property,
Yes.
either real or estate. So if someone has higher valuation, they're going to pay more to fix the water lines than someone that has a lower valuation. So it could affect people that are renting. It could make their rent go up if we did a GO bond for water and sewers, was what I'm trying to get to, right? Because it's gonna be assessed on the house and not on the usage.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
So remember that our funding sources to pay for all these things are these things. So property taxes, sales taxes, or rates and fees. And rates and fees are always going to be paid for the service that they're receiving, whereas taxes are typically assessed for something that you wouldn't charge somebody. Like, you're not going to charge every time I call 911. You're not going to charge every time unless you had a toll bridge, but you're not going to charge every time I drive down North Scott. And so typically property taxes and sales taxes would be used to fund those types of things, where rates and fees would be charged to somebody that goes to the park because they're using the park, or goes to the golf course because they're using the golf course, or to people that are using water because they're using the water. Does that make sense?
I just think I wanted to clarify with maybe the new people is the revenue bonds are gonna be associated with usage, where a general obligation bond is gonna be associated with the costs or the assessed valuation of property.
Yes, and you could also have a revenue bond that was tied to sales tax. So you could have voters approve a sales tax, and then you would pledge, you would use those sales tax revenues to pay back that revenue bond. So that's another option. But if it's a general obligation bonds are solely repaid using property tax revenue.
Thank you.
And also know that the general sales, the capacity that you have at sales tax right now, it only goes up to 2% for general, and we are at 1.5. So you only have an additional half-cent capacity.
Could you use two different forms? Like on a revenue bond, could you use a sales tax and could you use the fee you put on
Yes.
something?
So, going back to you, Mrs. Barton, you said we only have a half-cent expansion available. You can't take this in, let's say it's gonna be a water increase or a water tax. It's not like the police and fire tax. You can't do something specific like that because of this, because we have a street tax, right?
State law only allows certain types.
So if we have the state law change, then we can do something different at that time.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so to clarify, for the half-cent general, or the half-cent capacity you have left in the 2% general city sales tax, that sales tax can only be used for the benefit of the city. That is its limitation. There are also the capital improvement sales tax, which the city has and is capped out on. The transportation sales tax, which it has and is capped out on. So that half-cent general city sales tax is the only thing you have left. And you could limit it through the ballot language like you did with the public safety one, but then you would be totally capped out right there, and there would be no other sales tax areas to go in besides the local option economic development sales tax, which not many people
But you can always
use.
put a sunshine clause in that too and says it's only good for 10 years because we have enough.
You could, but then that could affect your ability to use some of the like the debt obligations, because if you put a 10-year sunset in it,
I mean, it could be a 20 if we needed to go out to whatever. I'm just saying we could put a sunset on that tax to pay off the bonds that we needed to go out and get.
The ballot language that the city council could approve to put towards voters could include a limitation and a sunset in it, if that is what the city council wanted to do.
And our capital improvement sales tax that we have currently has a sunset provision. You could go back to the voters to take off that sunset provision and then use after, so we already have debt associated with that. But what you could do is you could go back to the voters now and say, can we take off the the sunset provision, and then we could use that to pay for some payback debt for.
I think
Or
it's-
you could do that and you could pay as you go instead of borrowing the money, and you would save yourself some fees and interest at the risk of possible inflation.
I mean, I think a lot of this will make sense whenever you come up with those kind of the dollar figures, what it's gonna cost. But I think it's good information to have to, when it comes to that point, we see the money, so.
Al, real quick, when is that sunset on that? Do you kn-
I want to tell
you-
you in
that's
the next 6 years
That's one.
ish.
Go ahead, Allison. Okay.
Ish. And yeah, and then coming up pretty quickly in the grand scheme of things. While I see the risk of inflation, I also am a person that just lived through the recession when sales tax tanked, and it put us in a precarious position. So my comfort level, which doesn't mean much, it's just my opinion, and you guys get to make a decision. Like, debt scares me, because especially when you're talking about sales tax revenue, securing that, because I saw so many cities get into trouble during the recession. So, but
This might be for Patrick. Can we tie use tax to a specific item, or does that have to all go into general funding?
You could restrict the use of a use tax through the ballot language. I believe some cities have done that. I do believe Liberty did it. But again, one of the issues that you have when you tie it in and limit it is if there is overfunding, then there's nothing else you can do with the money. That's always that's the pie in the sky
Can you
problem.
keep it as a broad term and say infrastructure improvements, or do you gotta be a specific term and say water improvements?
The city council has broad authority to insert limitations into the ballot language as it sees fit. Typically, one of the way you'll see it phrased, if you look at most ballot language throughout the state for sales taxes specifically and use taxes, is you will see a list of items, water lines, sewer lines, infrastructure, and then you'll see a catch-all provision at the end that says, or other public purposes as allowed by law.
I mean, I just listened to Greg. I mean, we're gonna be fixing stuff till my grandkids are through school. So, I mean, if we did infrastructure improvements, I think will be a catch-all.
Yeah, and that would be broad enough, because we use Merriam-Webster's definition of infrastructure. There's no state law definition of what infrastructure is. So that would be broad enough to include roads, water lines, sewer lines, potentially stormwater too. That might be a little trickier, but I think it could include that.
I guess my next question would be for Sheila, and I don't know if you actually have this answer yet. What is is there an estimation anymore that we can, I know you gave us one time what cost of sales have done for like the state or the county or the nation, whatever, but I don't know what it is for the city, what we would actually get in a use tax.
so many years ago, I begged the county to do a calculation for me. They get a use tax. They actually have a use tax, and they were able to go back the last 12 months, and at that time it was almost $500,000 a year.
And how many years ago was that?
That was,
Before the,
goodness, it was like in 2013 or
I
2014.
couldn't imagine what it'd be today then.
And the thing about use tax is it varies wildly. If we ever did pass a use tax, I honestly would encourage you to look at it to fund capital items, not operating that are ongoing. The reason that use tax fluctuates so wildly is because if you have a lot of building going on in your community, those things are typically brought in from out of state, and so use tax is paid on those instead of sales tax. And so if you have a lot of construction projects going on, you might get a few years of a lot of use tax, and then if you have some years where there's not a lot of growth, and you started depending on that use tax, all of a sudden it would dry up and then you wouldn't have money to fund operations.
What's the percentage of people that are paying a use tax today that are buying all their stuff on Amazon or any other one of those sites like that? And I mean, 'cause I see like Prime trucks on my street every day, but I don't know how many of those people are actually paying tax to drive on my street.
Yeah, well, I can't tell you that because we don't get a use tax, so without somebody like the county being kind enough to go back through all their records and do calculations for us, I can't tell you. It was very nice. Cass County went in and did a lot of extra work that year, and were able to calculate what we would have gotten during that last 12-month period.
But I agree with you. I mean, I think if we did a use tax and we got it approved, I think it should be tied to a capital improvements. And that way it's an ongoing fund we can use for that.
I just want to make sure, the T6 at the bottom of the page and the WW1, those are the two things that the residents voted on a few years ago, correct? The
Correct.
street fund and okay. So I think of what you said was that,
Councilman Powell, T6, yes, but then the stormwater
Right.
preservation, the SWs,
Yeah.
that also, not the WW1.
okay. So in both those cases, we've shot, at the end of this year, we'll have shot through our money. I mean, there's red after that for T6, and there's
That's correct.
one red after SW5. Yes. Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, and they're a little bit different. So we actually have some stormwater bonds that were voted we still have some remaining bonds to issue.
Oh, okay.
And then, but the street bonds, we just issued the remaining voted street bonds. So in order to issue more street bonds, those would require voter approval, and we were hoping that the council would put that ballot question to citizens in April of next year so that we had funds available for those projects.
Okay, thank you.
Does the city have any kind of minimum bonding set aside for Parks and Rec? We're talking about all the infrastructure and water lines and such, but how about like Parks and Rec?
So Parks and Rec could do it different ways. They could do revenue bonds. Those revenue bonds would be repaid with either their park sales tax, they have their own sales tax, or through fees. They could do a fee increase in order to pay that. The outdoor water park, it was actually paid for with general obligation bonds. So those bonds would go against the 10% debt capacity that we have available for water and wastewater projects, Councilman Clark. So you guys are asking great questions, but a lot of, there's a lot of details, and I didn't want to overwhelm you guys tonight, so please know I'll be overwhelming you in future weeks, but one project at a time, hopefully.
Thank you.
You guys have any more?
No, that concludes our work session, Mayor.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll adjourn the work session and call the regular meeting to order. Please stand as you're able, pledge allegiance. Councilman Kraft will lead the pledge. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Larkey,
Here.
Councilmember Savage,
Here.
Councilmember Powell. Here. Councilmember Trutzel,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Kraft,
Here.
Councilmember Goff,
Present.
Councilmember Lawson. Here. Councilmember Peak.
Good. All right, personal appearances. We have a presentation of a proclamation for Public Works Week. Councilman Powell will.
Whereas Public Works Whereas Public Works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the city of Belton, Missouri. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of Public Works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Belton, Missouri, to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, now therefore Norman K. Larkey Sr., Mayor of the City of Belton, does hereby proclaim the week of May 16, 2021 as National Public Works Week in the City of Belton, Missouri. We urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make every day to protect our national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness whereof the mayor has set his hand and caused the seal of the city to be affixed in the city of Belton, Missouri, this 11th day of May in the year of our Lord 2021. There you go.
We do have a few Public Works people here, and I want to drag them up here and have their picture taken with you.
Okay. Sure, yeah.
It is Public Works Week, and so I want to make sure these guys come up and they're recognized for their work. These are the guys who are out there day and night, 100 degrees, minus 10, out there doing the work. And I want to make sure that you understand who's really behind the work and not me.
Mayor, would you care to come down and join them?
I'll take you up here. Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And you walked away with it.
All right, consent agenda. One motion, non-debatable, to approve the recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Regular agenda. A motion approving the final reading of bill number 2021-24.
An ordinance approving a final plat for Center 301, a tract of land in the southwest quarter of Section 12, Township 46, Range 33 in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the plat for recording with the Cass County Recorder's Office.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councilman Olson.
I believe that should say southeast quarter of section 12 later in the document, and I drove by just to be sure. I believe it's situated in the southeast corner. Anybody want to check that? To my eye, it was southeast, and later in the document it says southeast, but just something small I noticed.
It could be southwest in the section. That road probably isn't on the section marker, so that's
Okay.
probably why it says southwest, I would say.
Let me control F real quick.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I don't know if that's a section marker there, that road,
On page, just for reference, page 57 says southeast corner. So yeah, I mean, if it's a situational question, great. Otherwise, just a little thing.
Yeah, I think what I'm noticing here, I think Mayor Larkey's spot on. It says the southeast corner. Here it's talking about the location at the road structure, but on the legal document, it's the southwest portion in that quadrant of the legal, making it very confusing.
Either way, it's right behind Target.
True, correct. And we will look and verify that that's correct.
All right, thanks. That's all.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is this a voice? This is a voice vote.
This one's a roll call.
Roll call, I'm sorry.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Councilmember Savage,
Aye.
Powell. Yes. Trutzel,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Peak.
That motion passes. B, motion approving final reading of Bill 2021-25.
An ordinance approving a final replat for Lot 8 Belton Gateway, a tract of land in the southwest quarter of Section 12, Township 46, Range 33 in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the plat for recording with the Cass County Recorder's Office.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Councilmember Peak. Aye. Goff,
Aye.
Trutzel,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Savage,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Powell.
Yes.
That motion carries. C, a motion approving first reading of Bill number 2021-26.
An ordinance approving a development and maintenance agreement between the City of Belton and Center 301 Limited Partnership for public and private infrastructure in Center 301 Apartments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to bring this up to council this evening, that originally we had placed this on the agenda as a double read, and the reason for that was so that the organization that's building these apartments could get a quicker start on these items because of the cost of construction. And we actually have somebody from Case here this evening, if you had any questions for them. But I did want to let you know that that was the original intent, although it was pulled back to just a single read for tonight.
Would that representative like to come and address and speak to this at all, or?
My name's Justin Dixon. I'm with Case and Associates. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have, but we are ready to start as soon as our permits are in our possession. So we're
Okay. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Chet.
Would you prefer to go ahead and have a second reading on this then?
I don't believe there's any reason not to. We're in agreement with the development agreement as it states.
Yeah, and just so that the city council's clear, these development agreements are required by the Unified Development Code when a person is seeking a PUD or a planned unit development classification under the zoning code. They are drafted by the city and then sent to the developer, the property owner. In this case, I believe that once it was drafted by the city and sent to the developer, there were no changes made to the development agreement, as was, approved by city staff.
Councilmember Kraft.
I had a couple of citizens just ask, from the map, they didn't see anything about tornado shelter. Is there something, or a safe space where people would go at the apartments if there were a tornado?
There wasn't any, I don't believe there's anything developed on it, no.
Councilmember Peak.
I just had a question. Are you from, is it Oklahoma?
Tulsa, yes.
Tulsa. Are you from there?
Yes,
So you drove up tonight to answer questions for us?
I did.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Well, this is just a really minor thing, but it seems that for parkland, you're choosing the open trail, scenario. You have a trail that goes through.
We're gonna have a larger trail system that's, I believe it's 8 feet, that will connect to the Nexus Trail on Marquee Parkway and, the Nexus, I guess it'd be the sidewalk that connects to the Nexus Trail off of Town Center Drive.
Okay. Well, this probably isn't a fair question for you, but from my reading here, it says it needs to be 10 feet wide, and it also needs to have 15-foot easement, but some of the trail goes right through buildings, it seems. Or,
That trail is, that's not a public trail. At that point, that was suggested by staff for us to, as an amenity for the tenants living there, to have easier access to the Nexus Trail system.
okay,
Because our development is a gated development.
okay, so so this isn't the community open space network, then it's the other option, which is privately dedicated recreation space, so, okay. And under there, it says it must provide minimum neighborhood park improvements, either, but not limited to family picnic shelter, children's playground, or turf playfield, so it's,
We'll have 2 dog parks on either one large one, well, it'd be 2 dog parks. We'll have one for small dogs, one for large dogs. We'll have a very large resort-style pool with outdoor cabanas, outdoor fire pit, 4 outdoor cooking grills by the cabana, an 80-inch screen TV under the cabana with seating. We'll have a opened rec room that comes out from the clubhouse to the pavilion by the pool house. We'll have probably 6 to 8 scattered picnic tables with outdoor charcoal grills areas scattered throughout the development.
okay.
And a lot of just green open space with the landscaping and the sidewalks connecting all throughout the development. So we feel there'll be a very residential feel where the residents will be able to move throughout the development and mingle with the other tenants and have more of a community feel.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Councilmember Clark.
My question is, what percentage of families do you actually have in these apartment complexes?
Not a lot, because this development specifically, we don't have any 3-bedroom units. And not very many of our developments do have 3-bedroom units. So we're primarily, we're 50% 1-bedrooms, 50% 2-bedrooms. So we're primarily going to be, if they are family members, there may be, our family units are very young kids, maybe just starting, looking for that first home, or they're empty nesters that are wanting to get out of the maintenance of a home. A lot of young professionals before they decide
That's just
to buy.
some of the stuff that we've learned over the years up here, just talking to people that run apartment complexes. They don't typically have a lot of families in there, so I was just trying to figure out how much green space we actually really need for families if we don't have kids a lot, but it's nice to have it.
Well, we've done this, in the last 4 or 5 years, even just in 5 or 6 different states with the young professionals, even with the weather, we're starting to see that they don't want to be, even in the different cities we're in, they don't want to be on top of each other. They like to be able to get out and be able to even just walk their dog, walk around the place, have some fresh air, and have some open space, and especially with the last year's environment. That's even more true.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Go.
Sir, I heard you say private trail going through there, that will be open to the public? Will it be open to the public, the trail through this?
My understanding was it wasn't, and you'll have to, but maybe it was gonna have an access gate that it was, but I was under the impression that it was, because our development is a gated community. And so it was suggested to the staff that we just make a more defined trail that looked to be connected to the Nexus Trail system from both sides, so just to create the more walkability between our.
Okay. So it will be connected, but it'd be primarily for the use of the people that live there, just to get to the trail. Okay.
Get to the trail system.
I have another question. Is there a workout facility on there, or will you have new people for our High Blue Community Center?
Well, we do have a workout facility, but we have them at all of our gyms, and that's more or less gets used as their backup when they ran out of time, didn't have time to make it to their primary gym. They're good gyms. We have all the equipment, but it's not the same feel as going to a real gym.
Of course not.
No.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
All in favor?
Or voice vote, I'm sorry. Oh, that's all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Make a motion for a
motion
second
carries.
reading.
Move for a second reading.
We have a motion for a second reading. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Motion approving the second reading of bill number 2021-26.
An ordinance approving a development and maintenance agreement between the City of Belton and Center 301 Limited Partnership for public and private infrastructure in Center 301 apartments.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call?
Councilmember Savage,
Aye.
Powell, Kraft,
Aye.
Trutzel,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Peak, Mayor Larkey.
Yes. That motion carries. All right. D, a motion approving the first reading of bill number 2021-27.
An ordinance of the City of Belton, Missouri, amending Chapter 3, Section 3-24, retail by the drink for consumption upon premises food percentage exceptions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And any,
I have a question.
Councilmember Gall? I read it over pretty thoroughly, I think, and I'm trying to figure out just is we're eliminating one word there. Is that what I saw? And that was the,
Yes, previously, about a year ago, maybe two now, the city council made an exception to the retail by the drink license to essentially allow for tasting rooms. During that drafting process, we missed two of the types of manufacturers that could have a tasting room, and now we're going back and correcting that by deleting that, just the liquor manufacturer, because now this exception will apply to liquor manufacturers, 22% manufacturers, and what was the third one?
5%.
5% manufacturers. So if you manufacture those types of intoxicating liquor at your establishment, you can get a retail by the drink license in the city.
so liquor doesn't cover that as an umbrella. It's,
Well,
when you have wine, beer and. and
so I think
liquor.
wine would fall under the 22% manufacturer solicitor,
Okay.
because I think,
That's correct. The liquor manufacturer does not cover the other two because liquor is a license in and of itself.
so if you, prior to this code amendment, if you manufactured wine and you were 22% manufacturer solicitor, which is based on Andrea and I's discussions, is a more common type of license than what we thought. Not here in the city of Belton. There's zero in the city of Belton right now. But you could not have done a tasting room or a retail by the drink establishment there. This was brought to city staff's attention, and we are just now going back and kind of correcting that to allow for those sorts of tasting rooms.
Thank you.
Councilmember Peak. Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Is there a need to do a second reading on this? I don't know when his permit, when he's trying to open.
You have adequate time as it is now, if it's approved at the next meeting for a business that's hoping to have a soft opening the very next day.
I'm gonna move for a second reading.
We have a motion and a second for a second reading. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. D, motion approving motion approving the second reading of bill number 2021-27.
An ordinance of the City of Belton, Missouri, amending Chapter 3, Section 3-24, retail by the drink for consumption upon premises food percentage exceptions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Oh, just a question, who are we talking about? I mean, it seems that people, seemed like it
Broken
was
Hatchet.
person
Oh,
or
the
one-
brewery, Broken Hatchet.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
Yep,
okay, cool.
yep. Sorry, I thought you
No,
understood that,
I'm-
so. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Savage,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
Kraft,
Aye.
Trutzel,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
Councilmember Clark,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Peak.
That motion carries. Do we have any city council liaison reports? Go ahead.
We had a Public Safety Sales Tax Oversight Committee meeting on April 28th via Zoom. Sheila, our Finance Director and Assistant City Manager, provided an overview of the fiscal year 21 fire, police, and public safety sales tax revenues and expenditures. The numbers are available in the meeting minutes on the website. There were some questions about expenses paid out of the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund versus the general fund, and it came down to how the budget was approved by council last year. Also notably, Belton PD did not use all the money planned as there was difficulty in finding candidates for positions. They're adjusting their hiring and trying some new things, for example, training folks first in dispatch before they go to the academy for those roles. There was also some discussion around the long-term goals of the fund, whether it's for capital improvements, training, salaries, etc. And the committee decided to put together a report after each meeting versus a single annual report. So Jane Hull is going to work on that, and I'll be helping her. Lastly, there was some discussion about public safety sales tax funds being allocated to Belton Emergency Management. The ballot language would allow for that, but under the previously approved budget, the council allocated the balance of the funds to fire and police. And the next meeting is planned for October 27th this year at 2 p.m.
Any other discussions or any other council liaison reports? Probably not, so. I have no communication, so city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. There are a few items that we have for you this evening. First, Carolyn is up to discuss and provide an update on the 353.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to let everybody know that an informational letter did go out to all property owners that the 423 parcels of Old Town regarding the Chapter 353 incentive. And I know that it's been received because I've already had a couple of inquiries. So just wanted to let everybody know that I hope that it's going to be received well, and I hope that my phone starts ringing so that we can get some redevelopment in Old Town happening. So I thought you'd be interested to know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. The next item, the council may have seen some information that's been on social media, and the city has also provided some clarifying information regarding blasting that will occur for the Center 301 apartments. That their first tentative date, first of all, they've received their permit. It's been evaluated and approved by the fire marshal. And the first tentative date for blasting is set for Thursday, May 27th. And of course, that is all based upon weather. And then they believe blasting will last for a couple of weeks, but of course, that also depends on how that goes. Roads will be closed in that area for a short time while that occurs, and just wanted to provide you with that update. And then lastly, were there any questions on that? Because I know that that was a topic of conversation. Okay.
Anybody have any? Go ahead.
Are any of the roads that are going to be closed like main thoroughfares? It will not affect 58 at all?
Town Center Drive and Markey Parkway.
I would imagine they'd probably only be closed when they do the blast for
Right,
that
exactly.
few seconds.
Right before their final, they'll clear it for the final, do their safety, they'll blast, and then they'll open back
Yeah,
up.
they
So
believe
30
it'll-
minutes or less.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. And then the last item that I have or actually there's a couple more items. Strategic planning dates. Wanted to talk to the council about that coming up. The dates from the moderator to assist the city in that process is July 22nd and 20. This process will take about a day and a half. And so they're looking at a 2-day combination that would be back to back. So it could be either July 22nd and 23rd, July 30th and 31st, or August 5th and 7th. Days of the week? Typically it's a Thursday, Friday, or Friday, Saturday. And so I would really encourage all the council, department heads will be there as well. And so if you could let me know your availabilities on those dates so we can try to get that ironed down and for attendance at that. It's really, really so important. It really served us well when we did it 3 years ago. We also hope to have additional information. The survey process is going very well. They've received probably 90% of the surveys back already. And so they're hoping to get the other portions, and then they'll be able to assess that and be able to provide us with the feedback of that, which will then come back to the council as well. So that will help with part of that strategic planning process. And so and of course, the sooner we have that information from that goal setting and strategic planning, helps us then prepare as we start, gives us the goals for programs to be able to include in the following year's budget as we begin to prepare that. And then lastly, I just wanted to share that Jay brought this by to me. Eagles Landing is featured in a golf publication called Tee Times. It's a great article, so I have it out here if any of the council would care to see it. And that's all that I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Clark.
Dave's not here today, but hopefully you can. Me and Perry had an email today from a concerned citizen in Belray that people are parking over the sidewalks, and I was going to ask Dave about that. I don't know what our laws are about blocking sidewalks and stuff like that, and he's stated that he's got on our website and actually posted some complaints. And I was just going to have you guys check into that, see what we can do and how I can answer his questions.
Well, and this evening I'll also be turning and looking to Chief Lyons because typically parking is more of a code enforcement from the law enforcement side. So we'll look into that, and then I'll also check with Dave and look into the system to see those other concerns that
Okay, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing is I usually don't talk about people that has passed away, but we had I call her a legend in our community. Nadine Cavanaugh passed away. She was almost 99 years old, and unfortunately with COVID, I haven't been able to see her in a while, but speaking with her over the years, I mean, she had a lot of great history of our community, so hearing that Nadine Cavanaugh passed away just shocked me a little bit because I thought she was going to live forever, but wonderful lady she was, so I just wanted a family watches that express my condolences to them.
Thank you. Do we have any other communication from any city council? Mayor, Councilmember Powell.
Well, as Alexa alluded to, there's going to be blasting in Ward 4 for the Center 301, and there was a lot of citizen concern about how much ruckus there was going to be from the blasting. So Sheila was in charge last week, and I asked her if I could call the state and get some clarification, and she said yes, and I talked with John at the fire department. So Sheila asked me just to go over a little bit so the next time blasting comes up, we know what we're dealing with. So I asked Steve Grass, who's in the Missouri Division of Fire Safety, two questions. First of all, is there any requirement to notify property owners within 500,000 or any other fixed distance that has dimensions? And Mr. Grass agreed that no, it's a scale distance, which is a calculated dimensionless quantity, which means that the blasting company is required to make a calculation using 55 as their scale distance, and anyone that's within that 55 is supposed to be notified. That's not 55 feet, it's a 55 dimensionless quantity, which for the amount, and it's based on the amount of explosive that's going to be used. So for this calculation, at least from the map that I saw from that Sheila sent to us, the distance is a little bit less than 500 feet. And that includes Kohl's, it includes Target and Home Depot, and it includes a few businesses on the other side of Mullen, but it doesn't include anybody in any residents in those areas. And even so, Bradford Estates homes, half of them, well, some of them got a notice that there was going to be blasting, and that means that the blasting company was either overly conservative or overly concerned that they didn't limit their notification to this calculated 500 feet or a little bit less, but they actually used a distance up to 1,000 feet, which would have been okay, but they didn't tell all of Bradford Estates. So then you got neighbors saying, well, did you get this? Did you get this? And so there was a lot of confusion. And then the second thing I asked them was, or the state, was does the state check blast calculations of the blasting company? And they don't. The blasting company makes the calculations, sends the appropriate notices, and if there are any, they offer pre-blast surveys to structures within 35. That means not 35 versus 55 feet, but a distance nearer the blast. They actually offer to come in and take pictures and do a survey of what damage you might have already before the blasting, so that if you claim that there's damage afterwards, they can go and see what the difference is. They also take seismic readings within the 55 distance, but these seismographs are kept for 3 years in the company safe, I guess, and they don't release them to anybody unless there is a complaint after the blasting. However, neither the pre-blast calculations nor the seismographs are sent or reviewed by the state unless there's a complaint. And one thing that I was also able to confirm, that if a business or a homeowner refuses a pre-blast survey, meaning you're fairly close to where the blasting is, because you don't want a stranger in your house taking pictures, then you will not be offered compensation if there is damage, because obviously they don't know the before to compare with the after. So again, Target and Home Depot are getting pre-blast surveys. They did that a week or two ago. Kohl's is getting a notification, and the businesses across Markey Parkway got notifications. And some people, I might say erroneously, but they, again, as a part of a goodwill or as part of going overboard, the company, Morgan Explosives or whatever, or construction, they went a little bit too far and only notified part of Bradford Estates, which is the nearest residential area. So it really brings up two things that surprises me. One is we seem to always have some I don't know, not argument, but disagreement about this 185 feet for rezoning, and now we got blast distances. And it seems that, and I talked briefly with Councilman Clark about it, that we should be really notifying a whole subdivision, or doing some kind of notification, maybe to the whole city for that matter, when there's something as important as blasting in an area. And second, I know that we don't have, I don't think we have, blast experts. The state doesn't have blast experts, but it seems, I am disappointed that we don't have somebody checking these, because if the computer or, garbage in, garbage out, if somebody puts in the wrong data point, and they have 10 times as much explosive as they think they do, then not only could residential property get hurt, or businesses, but also residents themselves. So I know we don't. I know in the industrial business, the large corporations check all these things, but I know governments don't have that ability. This guy at the state says we have over 1,000 blasts going on in Missouri every single day. We can't check all of those. So, but I guess if I was the manager of Target, looking out onto the field behind me and seeing a truck pull up and it says explosives on it and people unloading things, I would say to myself, gee, do those guys really know what they're doing? And they are licensed people, but for doing these explosions, but nobody's looking over their shoulders. So that's just information. I'm not proposing anything.
From my experience, they know what they're doing, and not saying that they can't make mistakes, but they're pretty dialed in on what they do, so. Councilmember Perry, Goff.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Just to elaborate a little on Councilman Clark's comment, I've received numerous calls in the past couple of weeks regarding codes, which is good. It means that people care about where they live. Things that we're covering are mostly even on the state stuff, such as the commuter parking lot and the RVs there, and encampments on the banks of the highway and such. But I think people ought to know that the city attorney told me we've hired a fourth even codes enforcement, I think. But anyway, we're increasing it, and it is a big issue that's being addressed. So, and that's one thing. The other thing is the Meadow Creek Parkway that the mayor and I talked about some tonight, and I hope we can still come up with some kind of solution there. We're working on that. And last but not least, I'd like to just thank, I don't know, Greg must have a lot of pull or something, because I asked Alexis to do something about the striping on 58 Highway, and she turned it over to Greg, and boom, it's been painted and striped from Bell Ray Boulevard all the way up to Y Highway, and thank you. People couldn't see where they were at on it, and particularly in the rain. So it got done. Might have been coincidence, but
It wasn't a coincidence, but I did call them and request it be done, and they said they'd take care of it.
well, good. It still looks nice.
They fix the lighting? Not yet. That's another long-term problem I have.
But I can tell you, Greg, it ended it. And when you got the intersection of Y and 58, it went to boom. You could tell the difference, huge.
Councilmember Kraft.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to request a work session to hear a quick presentation by SeeClickFix, the government app that would help fix many of our citizens' issues with communication with the city and be able to streamline work orders and reports while saving time and money. This app is used by many cities nationwide, including Lee Summit and Peculiar. I've been suggesting this app with citizen approval for the past 2 years unsuccessfully, and now that the citizens have given me the seat, I'd like to follow through. One of the big things that this is going to fix is things that Councilman Clark and Councilman Goff were talking about, how people are saying, they're contacting us saying, what's going on with this code, or what's going on with, I had someone contact me about a pink stripe and wanted to know if that meant they were going to get their curb fixed. Those things would all be within this app, so we could easily, if someone contacted us, go, this is your answer. Yes, it's already been approved or whatever. And not only that, they're going to get that communication back from whatever department it goes to. So they're going to know what's going on and not even necessarily have to contact us. I'd just like to be able to have a quick presentation from them. Also, I would like to request a work session for council and city staff to discuss the American Rescue Plan funds of $4.35 million over the next 2 years. I propose we work together as a team, allowing council and department heads the opportunity to present and discuss what fits the criteria for the funding and what would best serve Belton citizens.
Mayor, there's a couple of things that I would like to address with that. We're happy to get a hold of Click Fix about a work session. I do want to let you know, however, though, that council has approved an ERP system for the city, and included in that is that type of software module that we were going to include. But I'm happy to bring that in as well and have a separate system, I suppose. And then the next item is the Treasury Department actually just today came out with their guidelines for how those funds can be used. It is a how many page document?
151.
151-page document that we are going through today, and we will be getting more information. So hopefully we will have more information, and staff has been readily working on a plan for the best use of those dollars, of what the needs are within the city, so that the council has all that information in front of them in order to make a decision. For example, those funds cannot be used on roads. So we know that that's one item that we can carve out, and looking at those other needs within the city of how it qualifies. So we will be bringing that to the council as soon as we are able to get through all of that documentation from Treasury.
Councilman Clark, thank you. Thank you, Councilman Clark.
Oh,
Sorry.
they do have it bundled into 4 separate areas. I did read through the document today as well. I also read through what the state of Missouri had sent out about a week ago, which is basically those 4 things that the Department of Treasury put out as well.
Speaking of the government, have we got our census data back yet?
No,
I
we
heard
have
it's
not.
supposed to be on April 30th.
I've not seen it, but I will check with the lead person on that project.
Because we got to redesign our city this year, don't we?
Yes, the charter requires reapportionment. So once we get that census data, we can take a look at that. Also, in the past, a lot of times cities will use demographers because some of the census tract data doesn't come back as finite as the city council needs it for reapportionment of those districts. So based on what we see from the census data, we may be bringing back potentially like some sort of contract for a demographer to help us specifically apportion out council districts.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
One more thing, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Tonight I was talking about the new apartments going in and such, and I made the comment about High Blue on there. I like to see High Blue or the parks involved in these things, such as the North Point and apartments that come into town. Stuff. There's so much that they can talk to them about, and memberships that I see that could be had down the road if they were included in part of the discussions. That would really help out Parks and Rec a lot.
Absolutely, and actually Carolyn has had conversations with our park director, Brian Wellborn, about some contact people as those new businesses come to town, and we have those contacts, we definitely put them in touch. So
sounds great.
Thank you so much, yes.
Councilman Powell.
Yeah, this must be Greg Rocco's night at the ballpark, but I also like to thank you for, before the election, we had a few citizens in Ward 4 asking for some traffic control on Valentine Way or Valentine Road and Street. And anyway, today or yesterday, Alexa sent me a note that said that you went out there, looked at it, and they're getting signed. So they were happy and they said thank you. So thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing nothing, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session to discuss matters pertaining to legal actions according to Missouri State Statute 610.021.1, to discuss matters pertaining to leasing, purchasing, and sale of real estate according to Missouri State Statute 610.021.2, and discuss matters pertaining to negotiated contracts according to Missouri State Statute 610.021.12, and that the record be closed and the meeting be adjourned from there. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That'll be a roll call vote.
Call.
Councilmember Trutzel.
Aye.
Peak. Aye. Goff.
Aye.
Lawson. Aye. Kraft.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Savage.
Aye.
Powell, Mayor Larkey.
Aye.